Welcome back to episode 4 of the Power and Potential podcast, where I help you design a life that you absolutely love. In today's episode, I interview my really good friend Jolyn GC, who I met about a year ago at the World Domination Summit in Portland, Oregon. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Jolyn GC is a modern and contemporary portrait artist based in Seattle. It wasn't until after her decision to leave her career as a criminal prosecuting attorney that she rekindled her interest in art. Her signature mixed media collage portraits, called Afro Jazz, serve as artistic contribution to the narrative that Black Lives Matter and reflects the African diaspora with its use of vibrant African textiles and the beauty of blackness. Influenced by her legal background, Jolyn has developed a social justice art program for teens called Teenergy that teaches young leaders how to use their creative voice for social change. As the curator and owner of a digital art gallery, she enjoys helping emerging artists define their own artistic paths. Honestly, this conversation with Jolyn was not only super fun, but it was also funny, inspiring, and incredibly insightful. Jolyn's journey is so unique, and she is such an inspiration for anybody out there who is trying to live a really great life while making a huge impact. She encompasses both of those things and so much more, and I just can't wait for you to hear this. Before we jump in, though, I want to make you a deal. If you really enjoy this episode, I would love it if you would take a picture and post it on Instagram stories, and be sure to tag myself and Jolyn in it so then we can share it on our Instagram. We would both love to know that you're listening and what you thought about this episode. Even better if you want to be super specific and tell us what your key takeaway was. Okay, friends, are you ready for this? Let's get to it. Jolyn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
So good to have you. You're glad to be here? I'm glad that you're glad to be here.
Awesome.
Now that we've got that out of the way. Do you want to tell everyone where you're at right now, what you do, and a little bit about your journey to get here?
Yeah, so that's a long, oh my gosh, that question is so intense. I am currently in Seattle, Washington, born and raised in Seattle, Washington. And I'm in my office in downtown Seattle. It's a beautiful day it's pretty windy though. But yeah, that's where I am currently in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm working on right now is a lot. I'm on this mission to disrupt and interrupt how the art world is going, especially when it comes to Black artists. There's a lack of representation when it just comes to the gallery system in general, and it's really hard for emerging artists, especially emerging artists of color, to break through. And so I am working on a master plan to remedy that.
Amazing.
That's all I can say, though.
Amazing. And have you experienced some of that kind of difficulty to break through yourself? Is that where the passion came from?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I was told that. So I have this art style rather. It's a modern and contemporary portraiture style called Afro Jazz that really came after my travels throughout the diaspora, the African diaspora, like Jamaica, Ghana, and even France. And this art style, is a reflection of just the beauty of Blackness in general. And so it's mixed media portraiture. And I had submitted it for an art opportunity, and I was shocked that I did not receive the art opportunity. Not that I'm all that or whatever, but I'm still like, hello, come on now. But I submitted it and didn't get it. And so I called to get feedback. And
right.
What they told me was, and this is someone on an official panel, like I'm not going to say who this entity is,
mm-hmm.
but they told me that my work was quote unquote too ethnic. Not mainstream enough. And so I kind of kept that, I told one of my closest art aces about it, and she was like, what? But then as I started sharing more about it, I was finding that was a common critique. And I thought, wow, like the art world is big enough to have artwork that's quote unquote too ethnic. So,
right.
Because my artwork is a reflection of me. So I'm not mainstream enough, I'm too ethnic, well, so be it. I will be unapologetically Black, and so will my art.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. I didn't know that story. I figured it came from, I figured your passion came from something that you had experienced yourself. So it's interesting to see. So in your experience now working with, I guess you work with young people, right?
Yes.
So do they have similar experiences like that, or are you trying to be kind of their first experience into breaking through the art world?
Well, when I work with youth, it's really around advocacy and using art as a way to express an idea for social change. But when I work with emerging artists and other, creatives, their experience oftentimes echoes the same experience that I had. And it's something that, should never even happen like in the first place, but it does. So, and honestly, I forgot what your entire question was because I had one sip of coffee. So while you ask that question, let me drink.
I had asked, my question was, do you find that the youth that you're working with have also experienced this kind of, some form of rejection around the type of art that they're creating already? Or is your kind of goal to be their first experience so that they don't have to experience that at all?
Yeah, that's actually more accurate portrayal of it, because their first art experience is really important to me. And it's something that I hope instills a sort of strength in their own personal identity, so so it's not their first experience is not negative. And it's funny because I never thought of it that way. But yeah, that'd be an accurate assessment of the situation.
Amazing. Okay, cool. So I know that you are working on something really big and really cool that I hope that you'll share a little bit about here. And I also want to know a little bit about kind of your career path and how you ended up here.
Okay, let's start with the career path first.
Okay.
I'm going to circle back to what I'm working on because I can only say so much, but exclusive. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So I started out, believe it or not, as a criminal prosecuting attorney, and I left that back in like 2008 because in my last rotation, I was in juvie. And a lot of the kids that were coming through the courtroom I knew their parents or a cousin or had some type of connection to them, or they went to my high school or they were from my neighborhood. And it was just really bleak.
Wow.
Yeah. And it became increasingly harder to do my job because every time, there was someone in there that I knew or had too close of a connection to, they had to call in a second prosecutor to, try the case because it was a conflict, of interest.
Right.
And I realized like, oh my gosh, I was standing at the gate of the school to prison pipeline, like, and that weight it definitely weighed on me. And I decided to leave to pursue alternative forms of justice for teens, and something where it was like, okay, what do we do to make sure that they don't even have criminal contact in the first place? Like what can we do that will be engaging? And I read this study from the National Endowment for the Arts that said that art was one of the, any type of arts-based learning had a significant decrease in discipline issues in schools. And it was mainly because obviously art is really engaging. And when students are engaged, the chances of misbehavior is quite low. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, wow, let me see what I can do with that. And then that's when I founded this program called Teenergy, which is the words teen and energy together. And it was all about social, it actually morphed. It started off as empowerment, like teens empowerment for girls. And then it kind of morphed into more of a social justice angle, and mainly because I was trying to combine art and law. Like I still had this deep love for law. And then this passion for art was growing. It's like, how do I marry the two? And so then it started. And actually what's interesting is the Sunday or the Monday before, the Monday after Michael Brown was gunned down, is when the first social justice version of Teenergy was kicking off. It was kicking off on that Monday. And I was in a room full of teens that were angry, hurt, confused, could not articulate what they were feeling or experiencing. And we just had a moment, like we needed to reflect. There was some healing that needed to get done. And art was a really big part of that. From visual art, we did painting we did like counter narratives in the media and like how they wanted to portray themselves. And we wrote poetry, and several different artists from the community came and led these various workshops and really facilitated in this sort of like mass healing. And it was so cathartic, but at the same time, it was also, it was needed. And these were teens who did not identify as artists at all. Like we took a survey in the beginning and a lot of them were like, no, I have no creative bone in my body, which is, obviously not true. But and then afterwards, they all felt like, oh my gosh, I can totally use my art. My art empowers me. And it was just such a warm feeling. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And so it was something that I decided to keep doing. And at first it was all privately funded. I used my own savings. Several checks I received from my mom, like, Mom, I need to do this. Somebody. And like private donors. And then it moved to having the city pay for a license, because, I put on my lawyer hat. So I licensed out the program.
Amazing.
Like 3 times. And then it went from that to then looking for grants. And so Teenergy is funded to this day. Like there hasn't been a time when Teenergy wasn't funded in some way, shape, or form, which is really powerful to me and helps with my visions of like what sustainability looks like in a particular field. So right now, sustainability looks like, late nights applying for grants. Right. Yeah. Now. That may change as I, review what the model is going to be.
That's incredible. I love that you've used Teenergy to kind of create this space a safe space where not only there's a sense of community that's built, but there's also a form of self-development going on kind of throughout the process. Because when people are discovering art and discovering the fact that their art is a reflection of themselves, then I think that's incredibly powerful and a tool they can use whether or not they choose to pursue art as something more formal in the future. It's a great tool to be able to use it in order to almost like self-therapy, really.
Yeah. And then, so that is actually a perfect segue into a little bit what I do now. So that's, the work with the teens, but that key piece of seeing yourself reflected in the art is a recurring theme that I think about like every day. When you go to a museum and you see all this amazing art and you're told that this is art and you're told that, this is what it looks like. This is how it feels, and if your art style is completely different or you don't see any reflections of yourself, you can have a feeling of, I don't belong. I remember I went to, Kehinde Wiley came to Seattle and he had this huge exhibition here. And there was like over 60 pieces of art. Don't quote me on that, but there was a lot of art and it was huge. And it was all like done in kind of like this Renaissance style but taking present day people and inserting them in like Renaissance style paintings. And it just blew my mind. I remember walking in there and seeing all of these portraits of people that look like me, huge and like beautiful ornate frames. And I remember the next day just feeling so beautiful, like hard to describe. but I just felt so beautiful. I felt seen. Felt like this incredible like sense of like self-love, and it was an awesome feeling. And
that's amazing.
I thought, wow, what is it going to take to have that type of level, that type of experience for just the ordinary person walking down the street, especially the ordinary person of color walking down the street and seeing themselves reflected in art. And it looks like getting more, exposure for artists making that type of artwork. So that is who I focus on now with the different projects that I do. And one of the projects that I'm currently working on now is this. I'm working on a digital platform that will allow artists of color, primarily Black artists, because Black artists are the most marginalized in the art world, to have exposure, and also as a platform that retains our culture. Right. And our like within its context. So it's not taken out of context or what have you. And also redistributes dollars to the artists that are making the work. So it kind of flips the traditional gallery model where it's 50% commission goes to the gallery, and then the artist would get their 50% once a piece is sold. Where it's a system that kind of does away with that and gives more of the percentage to the artist because they're the ones that, created the work. So I'm really excited about it because it's never been done. And even if it has been done, it hasn't been done the way that I envisioned it.
Exactly. That's amazing. Okay. So there's a common thread below kind of everything that or within, I should say, everything that that you've done, from being an attorney to opening or starting Teenergy, and now working on the things that you're working on. I sense some high achievement. What do they call it? Yeah, like do you kind of identify as a high achiever?
I identify as someone who goes for what they want and doesn't really care like what the obstacles are if it's something that I really want. If it lands on the higher achiever side, so be it. I don't like those harmful labels now. Yeah. But yeah, definitely at a point in life, I think that I was always seeking something outside of myself, whether it be grades or awards or whatever, some form of validation outside of myself. Really, to please my mom, to please whoever I thought needed to be pleased.
So what helped you kind of get to the point where you now focus on yourself and your own expectations?
Oh, it's a culmination of a lot of different things. So one, I had this experimental blog. It was it was called 31 at 31, and it was 31 days of art at the age of 31. And so every day I attempted to experience some form of art, and not your traditional visual arts, but more like, the art of silence, the art of greatness, the art of the start, more insightful arts, like arts, so to speak. And it was when I was writing The Art of Greatness, I realized what I was doing. I realized that I was constantly seeking something outside of myself. And that was back in 2012. So that was like the early kind of seeds that were planted. I remember having a conversation with my mentor, and she pointed this out as well about, the greatness is not outside of yourself. It's like and I'm totally botching this up. The way she says it is way more eloquent, but she was saying that, with greatness comes out of who you are and who you're being, and not of the things that you do. And it just blew my mind. I was like, right. That simple. So that was like experience one. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's not about you know, I don't have to do anything else. Like I'm great already, how I'm being. And then I went to a personal growth and development seminar, landmark education actually. And this was recently, this was back in like 2017. And, you know, you do all kinds of, you basically go in and you discover the things that you don't know, and you get access to the things that you don't know that you don't know. Because there's stuff that you know, and there's stuff that you don't know. But then there's this whole other massive area called the things that you don't know.
Right.
So while I was in the things that I don't know, that's when I discovered this kind of this pattern of overachievement and high achievement and looking outside of myself for validation and things of that nature. It happened during that seminar. And that was the second time my mind was blown, like, oh my gosh, there's more. So a decision that I made at the age of 6 pretty much dictated my life all the way up until 2017. It was operating in the background and I did not know. So it was almost one of those things where the first instance is when I knew it, you know, on an intellectual level. And then when I experienced that new learning and that discovery in that seminar, then it was one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, so now it's transformational. So it's like intellectual, like knowing something on an intellectual level versus, oh my gosh, now knowing something and being able to transform that, which they tell you how to do that. But yeah, it was really, really powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting when you get kind of a little tiny bit of insight like that, even if it's just, you know, one experience and how that one little thing impacted your entire life. It really makes you wonder. And I find that it grew my curiosity like crazy the second I started experiencing things like that, where I just wanted to learn more. I just wanted to understand more and more of what it was kind of in my past that impacted, like had that kind of power, you know, to impact my life all throughout and up until today. Right. So yeah, so it's really interesting. Are you willing to share your kind of breakthrough that came out of that?
Oh, yeah. It always just makes me smile because my mom remembers it exactly how I remember it. So
that's funny.
Yeah, I wasn't making it up. So there was this big award ceremony for honor roll. And it was myself, my mom, and my grandma. And I had a yellow sweater on, one of my favorite yellow sweaters. And I had gray penny loafers on with actual pennies in them because I was just too cool for school. And
you were how old again? Sorry,
I was 6.
You were 6. Okay.
Yeah, this was the first grade. I was 6 years old, and so we're at this ceremony. They call all the kids' names. They did not call my name, and this lady sitting next to my mom leans over, tilts her head, looks at my mom, and she's just like, oh, what a pity. They didn't call your daughter's name. And what I interpreted the look on my mom's face as, you know, I thought she was completely disappointed and I had did a horrible job of being a daughter, you know, because hello, how am I supposed to be my mom's daughter and I'm not giving her anything to brag about, you know? And so it was just like this horrible feeling of, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. So that
interesting.
That was the first, in that moment, I decided, oh my gosh, I have to do everything, win everything, be accepted into everything. Like everything I always have to be chosen, like no matter what. And so imagine carrying that feeling of I always have to be chosen to being an adult and applying for these very competitive art opportunities and not being chosen. And that girl coming up like, oh my gosh, you have to be chosen. And if you're not chosen, then it's like you're not, I don't know if it was like you're not worthy. It has like that flavor, but it's just like, oh my gosh, you're letting everyone down. You know, something
right.
You're not doing this right. Maybe this isn't for you. And all of that, you know. BS, basically.
Yeah.
So those were kind of like the things that were operating in the background that I had no idea about. And then now I can go back and look at all those instances where I experienced rejection. Like how I experienced rejection. I just got a rejection this week. And I just kind of laughed at it like, oh my gosh, they are so missing out. Like, all right, okay, girl, do what you want to do. Like that's how I look at it now.
That's amazing.
But I didn't look at it like that before. It was like they took a piece of my soul and I was never going to get it back.
Wow.
That's how it felt. It's laughable.
Yeah, it's very powerful because as a 6-year-old, you don't have the intellect at that age to be able to filter kind of what is worthy of your, like, you didn't make the conscious decision in that moment that forever on you were going to just achieve, because in your mind, it was just a natural, this is just what's going to come out of this, right? Because in your eyes, that's what you needed to do to impress your mom.
Right. But here's the cool part. Now, the cool part about all this is that, okay, so I didn't get honor roll. Mm-hmm. And I see this immediate look of disappointment, what I thought was disappointment in me on my mom's face. And in that moment, I was like, okay, I have to be chosen. I made the decision right then and there, split second, and then after that, it was like, okay, I got to do whatever I have to do. And so then they started calling the names for honor society. Honor society is higher than honor roll, right? And so then they called my name for honor society. Mom looks over at that same lady, like with her head tilted, like, oh, she didn't say anything, but she kind of just looked at the other parent, like, oh, your kid's only on honor roll. Meanwhile, my daughter's on honor society, like that, and so even that reinforced, like, oh, okay, so mom's happy now. So, okay, now, yeah, I got to go. It's not even good enough to just do, the one thing. Like, you got to make sure it's like the best of the best. And
right.
That also kind of had some jacked up psychology going on in the background. Because even if I did achieve something, if it wasn't the best of the best, or if there was a better option in that achievement, it was almost like it canceled out.
Right.
Yeah,
like it wasn't good enough unless it was perfect, essentially.
Yeah. So
interesting.
Imagine how many breakdowns I had as a kid because I would win spelling bees. And then there was a time in 3rd grade when I got so nervous, I spelled the word onion wrong. And I was devastated. My best friend was like rubbing my back, like, oh, it's okay. And I was devastated, like, oh my gosh, how can I mess up the word onion? I know how to spell onion. Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting because I think as we grow up then with an experience like that, right, it translates into this need to impress others. Like as an adult, I doubt, and correct me if I'm wrong, I doubt that you were kind of trying to get into law school and all this stuff just to impress your mom. There was probably some level of trying to impress kind of society at large, right? Or like everyone that you know.
Right. So at that point, it went beyond my mom, but my mom's approval was the first approval that I saw. And really most of the time it was the only approval that mattered to me.
Yeah.
And like, even still, I want to make my mom proud, but it's like, I think about what is it that I truly want to do first. And then when my mom will be proud of it because I'm proud of it, and even when I told my mom about that breakthrough, like, Mom, did you know when I was 6 years old, that's the decision I made, that I always had to, do stuff to give you something to brag about. And she just started laughing. And she's like, girl, you could have been sat down somewhere. She's like, I need to do all this extra, not for me. She's like, I've always just wanted you to be happy, and to just be proud of what you're doing and what you're up to in the world. And that was a huge breakthrough as well. Like, but it did. So before all the, the breakthrough, whatever, then it also came to a point where it wasn't just about my mom, like professors, anybody who I held in a high regard.
Yeah.
I wanted to give them something to brag about, you know, like even when I passed the bar exam and I was practicing law, I mean, everyone like, oh, that's my cousin, niece, daughter, sister, whatever. She's an attorney now. It was like that extended to them as well.
Right.
And that was a lot of pressure, especially when I was checking the deuces to the practice of law in 2015. Yeah. Like that was a hard decision to make. When I took into consideration what everyone else was going to think, when I just thought to myself, it's like, oh no, I'm retiring. Like this is my life. I am 100% certain that I want to go down the path of art and really pursue this. And the only person who was 100% supportive, with would not even question me, like not even saying, oh, well, could you go back if you wanted to, was my mom.
Wow.
That was just so amazing to me because she's the one who probably sacrificed the most. And for her to be like, oh, you know, I just want you to be happy. You know how expensive law school is, and she just wants me to be happy. Like,
yeah.
My mom is a saint. Okay. Like an absolute saint. And to still be in like, you know, debt. And my mom is still just like, I just want you to be happy. Bless her heart. Can we just have national
honestly
Wanda Faye Day? We just need to have that because seriously, she's an amazing person.
And isn't it such a relief to kind of hear from her too, like straight from her mouth, like, I just want you to be happy. That is all that I want.
Yes. Like it makes a difference. And the fact that she would be like, even if I weren't happy, like it doesn't matter. This is your life.
Right.
You get to live it. You get to make these decisions. So, yeah, it's so freeing. I've even sitting here, like, I just feel so liberated, and I've been feeling liberated since like December of 2017. Like that's when the whole other level of liberation came about. Cause I was already feeling some type of liberation as being, you know, self-employed, make my own schedule, do what I want, you know, living that life or whatever. But there was still that thing that was like, okay, well, if you're going to be self-employed, you better do it up, you know? And now it's just like, oh my goodness, I can do whatever I want. Like the entire world is mine, including the art world. It is mine. It is mine for the taking. And that feeling of liberation is something that when I'm talking to other people, like I want them to get that sense.
Right.
I want them to catch a hold of it. You know, like this is for real. Like you can have the same level of liberation if you want it. Like you can have it too. And it just gets me so excited. Like when I talk to other people that are just really out there, just doing the very thing that they want to do, I can't even explain it. Like it just makes me vibrate so high. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And then I have all this energy. Drink 80 gallons of coffee, just running around, super hyper, super pumped. But it's just an incredible feeling. And I want artists, especially Black artists, to feel that sense of liberation.
I totally get you. And, you know, that vibration you're talking about, that's exactly how I feel when I talk to you.
Oh, wish you knew. I appreciate it.
I want to touch on this topic of liberation because I think it's really interesting. I also find it interesting that you use the word liberation versus freedom, which is the word that I generally tend to use. And I kind of like the word liberation more. I'm curious to know what happened in December 2017 that kind of upped your feelings around, you know, being liberated. And also, actually, let's just start there.
So that goes back to that transformation of
having that realization.
Yeah, totally. That was one of the most freeing experiences I've ever had, because I could take the 6-year-old, give her, you know, her walking papers, like, okay, you did fine running the company now, the company called Jolyn's Life. But there's a new CEO in town, and she is not bound by what other people think, not even her own mama. So step aside and watch.
That is so powerful. That is so powerful. I had a similar experience, not quite in the same way, but I was having a conversation with my dad, and I might have told you about this, but I actually forget what the discussion was about, but I remember that the reaction that he had back to me when I was talking to him just kind of, shone a light on kind of the patterns of thinking that I was brought up with, and kind of reminding myself that, I grew up with this idea that there is black and white, right and wrong, and nothing in between. And so, that the opinions of others mattered a lot, and that you always had to be quote unquote right. Now, there's also another level added onto that because I was raised in a religious family. So right held a lot of different morality issues. But, aside from that, even there's just so much, it's loaded. The word right is very loaded when it comes to religion. Mm-hmm. So when, I was talking to him and he said something about, it's either this or that. And, if it's not yes, then you're kind of completely off base. And I remember in that moment, I just looked at him. I think I was completely silent and I just stared at him. And because in my head, I had made the realization, I do everything based on this way of thinking. It's either good or it's bad. If it's not perfect, essentially, then it's just not okay. And this idea of perfectionism has consistently stalled me in so many things in my life. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting to have kind of these breakthroughs and I felt exactly how you're saying, completely liberated to the point that I literally went home, I journaled 10 pages, and then I jumped on Facebook Live because Facebook Live was one of the things that I keep holding myself back from. And I'm I have nothing to be scared of. I'm not trying to impress anyone anymore, because in that moment I realized I'm operating under this kind of framework that's not really valid anymore. Right? It's the way that he thinks and the way that he kind of unintentionally brought me up to think. And I realize now that way of thinking isn't serving me. Mm. So it was so liberating. And I love that feeling. I'll remember that day forever of just having that breakthrough,
Yes. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. So yeah. And I feel the same way in the sense that, I wish that everyone could feel that free, and kind of let go of all of these things that have been holding us back all of this time. And it gets so deep. We can get deep on some of these things that, we're carrying around with us unconsciously. Right.
Yes.
So, okay. I wanted to touch on one other thing that you had mentioned. You had said that when you were considering kind of retiring from law, mm-hmm. that it was so clear to you that was the right way to move forward. But there were so many things coming from other people of how can you kind of keep ties there? Or are you sure you want to do this? So, what is if people feel that kind of, the feeling of feeling torn, essentially, do you have any advice for people on how they can, become clear, I guess, on the decision that they should take when they have all of these opinions?
Absolutely not. However, what I do have is a visual of what happened to me. So, and it's funny because, well, you'll hear why it's funny. So there was these decisions I had to make, right? So I would think of myself and visualize myself as a trapeze artist. And you know how trapeze artist needs to be able to swing from bar to bar, right? Mm-hmm. But that requires letting go of one bar so that you can get to the next bar.
Right.
But if you're holding onto both bars, you are stuck in the middle.
Absolutely.
So far you'll be able to go before you come to a complete standstill. Mm. So for me, I was experiencing more momentum and just really good feelings and all these confirmations of, meeting the right person, being at the right place at the right time, all of that sort of thing. I was experiencing more momentum for the bar that was art. And so then when I retired from the bar, like I literally retired from the Washington State Bar Association and released that bar, I was able to swing more with my art side, so to speak, and then take that hand that was holding onto the bar, because I was trying to hold onto both and it just wasn't working. There was no momentum, and move to the next.
Interesting.
On the bar called art, so to speak. And that visual of, okay, Jolyn, you can just hold on to both if you want and like not have any real momentum.
Right.
Or you can just go for it. Go for what you know, take all that momentum, all that energy and focus it in one area and see what you can do. And it doesn't mean that, I'm not taking any of my lawyer skills with me, because trust, when I'm like looking at contracts, when I'm reviewing things, my legal beagle hat is always on. I can see the deal in multiple ways and see like how it would benefit more than just, one party or what have you. So I still take that with me. It's a part of me.
Right.
But there's just so much more momentum on the art side of my life that I just, there's no way. Like I have never regretted releasing that bar.
That's amazing.
The bar.
That was going to be my next question. Did you ever think about, man, I shouldn't have done that?
No.
Did it ever cross your mind?
No, so before 2015, there was some periods where, because I left the prosecutor's office in 2008 and I did like entertainment law for a number of years. Then I kind of took a break. Then I returned back to it. And the minute that I made the decision in 2015, I knew that this was what I was going to do. Now, I didn't know what, swinging from the art bar was going to look like. I had no idea. But I knew that whatever it was going to be, it was for me.
Amazing. I love that.
It has been that way ever since.
Yeah. And, there's this sense of confidence, right? That it's kind of that visual, and I don't really know where I got this from, but it's kind of like, you take the first step on the stairwell, even though you can't see the rest of the staircase, just knowing that the next step in front of you is going to appear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's actually a famous quote.
I don't know who said it. Someone famous, but it's beautiful.
We need to look that up.
We do.
I want to say, I feel like it was Martin Luther King, but he may have gotten it from someone else. I don't know. We'll look it up.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to look that up. So something that I admire about you is that you kind of decide that you want something, or that you're going to go after something, and you just go get it. And it comes with this level of confidence that I don't see very often. So I want you to talk about, if you don't mind, kind of where that confidence comes from, and your ability to just go after what you need, or what you want, or what's yours, as you said earlier, with that level of confidence.
It comes from being, honestly, the firstborn child. I have two younger siblings. And I just had it set up in my mind that whatever I wanted really was for me. And it came from this story that my grandpa told me. He used to tell me that he was a chief of a tribe. And I looked at him and I was like, well, Grandpa, if you're a chief, does that make me a princess? He's like, yes, it does. You're a princess. So in that moment, so here I am. I don't remember how old I was when he told me that story. It was definitely before the first grade, because I remember I wrote this story called The Beautiful Girl. And it was about a princess. My teacher is like, oh, who's the story about? And I'm like, hello, it's about me. And her parents wouldn't let her go somewhere. Anyway, the point is that I've always thought that I was a princess, and princesses get what they want. And so couple that with assuming that because I'm the princess, I'm also the favorite. I'm everybody's favorite. So it's like, how can you say no? I'm your favorite. How can you say no to me? So it's like all these like extreme like personality / identity constructs worked, but they served me as as a young person growing up. But could you imagine being, in your 30s and you're walking around like, I'm a princess? There's still some residual of that, because I feel like, coupled with like the liberation and the liberty to just go after what I want, in the back of my mind, like, I'm a princess, so I'm going to get it.
That's amazing. And that actually makes me, it's hilarious, but it actually makes me feel good on some level, because my daughter is 3.5 and is convinced that she's a princess. And it's funny because like, I never thought about it like that. I never thought about it kind of in that sense that you kind of interpreted, being a princess and what that means. Right. Mm-hmm. And so when I look at her, I think of, she's comparing her beauty to the beauty of someone else. And I want her to be able to accept herself for who she is, as opposed to always trying to be Elsa from Frozen, for example. Right? Elsa from Frozen has long blonde hair. My daughter does not, And so, but it's interesting to think of it from that lens, because maybe I can also use that to my advantage and, twist it so that she can build some of that same confidence that you've got.
Well, it also stems from like knowing yourself as well. Because I remember growing up, like my mom hand painted all of the images in our house. Brown.
Wow.
All of them. So if there was an image of anyone that was royalty or, just anything, the person looked like me. We had the same skin tone. And that was very intentional on my mom's part, because, going outside of those walls, like who knew what I was going to come up against and be confronted with.
Right.
Between that, my grandpa telling me that I was a princess. And I really believed him, like for real believed him. Like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Totally. That's awesome.
And, those little seeds that were planted allowed me to just create this world where, I could get the things that I sought out to get. And so there's a difference between that and like the sense of entitlement. It wasn't just because I was a princess. Like the princess was kind of like the icing on the cake, because I was willing to put some effort into pursuing it. So naturally, yes, I would get it. Like naturally in college, working hard, being in a pre-law program, and foregoing certain activities to study for the LSAT or whatever. It's like I'm putting in all this effort in, so I'm trusting and believing that it's going to pay off. I will get an acceptance into law school. So, they always say faith is dead without works. Mm-hmm. And I really do believe that, especially if it's something that is for you. It's already a part of your life design. And then if you put some extra effort, some extra stank on it, you're going to get it. Like,
well, exactly.
Like that's the law, the spiritual laws of the universe, however the universe is set up. It's like, if it's for you and you put some work towards it, you're going to get it.
Yeah. It's amazing. I think it's that, if it's for you part is the part that a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their heads around. And even for me, it's something that only recently I'm starting to really believe. And I think that's the key, is actually believing that. And I think that's where kind of the whole princess concept comes from, really. It's like, it's that, and I don't think of it as kind of entitlement, as in you deserve everything regardless, just because you're you. Of course it needs work, but kind of that faith of letting go and just knowing that what is yours and no one's going to take that away from you. It belongs to you. I think that confidence around, essentially the outcome, that the outcome is always going to be what it's supposed to be, can really relieve tons of stress and anxiety.
But let me clarify, because when it's like, when I say it's for you, it's more like it's for you to do. It's more like I can always tell when something is for me to do, just like how it lines up. Like it's almost, I don't want to say effortless, but things just happen with ease. Like the resources come with ease. The right people to take it to the next level come with ease. And it's because it's part of my like life assignment. And I can always tell, like, if whatever vision I have, if it's something that will impact and serve others, it's going to happen. It just happens that way. So I've come to discover that the things that are for me usually impact and serve others outside of myself. So yeah, if it's for me, quote, like in parentheses, to do, then it happens.
Amazing. That's beautiful. I like it. Have you ever experienced resistance when you're going after something, anything in your life, and realize that you're actually not on the right path?
Yes, I have. Those are the kinds of things that I tend to block out, though, because they don't serve me anymore. So let me think. Probably when I was just like, so I knew that I needed to leave the prosecutor's office a while before I actually left. But I was just holding on, like, no, it was one of those things where it's like, I spent all this money, I did all this, like, I have to do this. So anything that felt like a have to or a should or any of those types of feelings where it's not your authentic self telling you, like, this is what feels good, this is what feels right. If it feels obligatory, it's not for you. It isn't. And what really gets done with resistance, you get worn out, like, even if you think of it like as on a tension rod, you're holding on so that the string, for example, like the rod will stay taut and will stay in place. There's like no flexibility. If you're trying to hold it for all that time, like, you get tired. But there's more expansive thinking that can go into that if you just like release it, and don't resist. You just release and look at it from like an aerial view, like, okay, what's going on here? What are the best options here? And you have the opportunity to like regroup and to rethink about what it is that you're pursuing when you're up against those feelings of resistance, if that makes sense. I see it visually in my head. I'm trying to communicate what that looks like.
No, it makes perfect sense. Okay, awesome. Yeah, that was helpful. The only reason I ask you is because it seems like you don't really experience resistance.
Oh, there's so many pivots.
Well, and that's the thing. I think, it's easy to kind of look at someone at the point that they're at today and just see, amazing things, but not really understand the journey that it took to get there, and the pivots and the challenges and the struggles that came kind of along the journey. Which is part of the reason why I wanted to start this podcast, is to have these conversations with people who have come a long way and have I'm stuttering over my words, with people who've overcome their own challenges and their struggles through understanding kind of themselves and their mindsets and how our minds can impact our lives so much. So yeah, I like to talk about the difficulties too, not just all the good stuff, because I know that we all have them, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So, okay. So one question for you, what advice can you give for people who identify as overachievers, who are kind of trying to kind of break that pattern of essentially trying to achieve more than what they actually need to achieve for themselves? If that makes sense.
It does make sense. The first word that comes to mind is stop. Second word, sit down. Third word or third phrase, you are already great. And I think just getting still and tuning into your inner self and your most authentic self And knowing that just the fact that you exist on this planet and of all the people in the world right now is like you're one of them right now in this moment. And there is nothing more that you need to do nothing more that you need to do outside of yourself in order to achieve this sense of greatness, because you're already great. And it's the things that you do and how you be and who you serve and who you impact, and what you stand for. Those are the things that make up how great you are and your greatness. It's not about achieving some, next status symbol or another, degree or whatever. It's really about who did you make smile today? Who did you impact? Who did you bless with just your presence? Like getting to the point where someone can leave the experience of being around you or with you, and they feel better and they feel like they can do something. Like, to me, that's the place to focus on, is who are you impacting just on a one-on-one basis? Are people excited after they get off the phone with you? Are they pissed? Like, what's going on? Are they just listening to you complain about not achieving enough? Like what? Like really, what's going on here? So that's my long way of saying you're already great.
I love that because I think that, kind of overachievers end up just focusing on the goal. And they focus hard on the goal and end up actually missing a lot of the time exactly what you're talking about, the experience of just being present, the experience of impact on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute level, which, when you look at it like that, we actually have a lot of power, more power than any of us realize, to impact other people, which at the end of the day, that is what we all want, whether we're, conscious of it or not. That is what fills our cups, so to speak. So I love that you kind of put that into perspective for us. So Jolyn, how can people engage with you?
Well, you can go to my website. It's jolyngc.com. That's JOLYNGC.com. And everywhere on the internet, you can find me at Jolyn GC. So
amazing.
NGC. Yep.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been amazing talking to you.
Likewise, Miriam.
And I'm going to have you back on the show in the future.
Oh, yes. Anytime.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it just me, or was that not an incredible conversation? Jolyn is just the best. I will put all of her links in the show notes, and I highly encourage you to go over there and connect with her. If you are inspired by this episode and feel like you could really use a push in the right direction in your life right now, then you will be happy to hear that you have a chance of winning a free 1-hour coaching session with me. To win it, all you have to do is head over to iTunes and submit a review. Every week, I will choose one lucky winner who will get to spend an hour working with me one-on-one on whatever the biggest priority you have going on in your life or in your career right now. As an added bonus, I will highlight your review on this show and on Instagram. I cannot wait to catch up with you in the next episode. But in the meantime, keep on designing the life that you love. Step-by-step progress will get you there and far beyond. Have an absolutely amazing day.